Confess your wrongs. In the land of Australia, there lived a little girl named Nancy. Her home was in a lovely spot on a high hill. Behind the house was a nice garden. Beyond the garden was a field of tall grass. Then beyond the tall grass was the bushel land or forest. Nancy and her brother Ronnie loved the beautiful forest. Nearly every Sabbath afternoon, Mother, Daddy, Nancy, and Ronnie would go for a walk in the woods. They liked to hunt for the many different kinds of wildflowers. In the hot, dry season, the tall grass behind Nancy's home became yellow and dry. In many parts of the country, terrible bushfires burned much of the beautiful forest land. The flowers and trees that God had created to remind people of Him were destroyed. One summer day, Nancy and Ronnie and the neighbor children were playing near the tall grass behind the house. They had a tent which Daddy had pitched for them to play house in. In the tent, the children built a little stove out of some old bricks. They set the table with their little dishes and then placed their playpans on the stove. It was then that Nancy was tempted to do wrong. It would be so much fun to have fire in the stove, but really cook something, she thought. But she remembered that Mother had told her not to play with matches or fire. Then a little voice seemed to whisper to her, "Mother doesn't need to know, and it really wouldn't have to hurt a fire on our stove." So she went to the house pretending to get a glass of water while Mother wasn't looking. Nancy quickly put her hand into the top drawer and slipped a small box of matches into her pocket. She ran as fast as she could to the tent where the others were playing. They put some bark and dry grass inside their brick stove. Then Nancy lit the match and held it to the grass. Quickly, the smoke curled upward. But almost before the grass had time to burst into flame, the kitchen door flew open and Mother called, "Nancy, did you light a fire in the tent?" Mother had seen the smoke as it curled up through the door in the tent. Now Nancy was afraid, for she had been disobedient. As the children quickly put out the fire with some water, Mary, one of the neighbor children, whispered, "I'll take the blame. Your mother can't do anything to me." Quickly, Nancy answered her mother, "Mary did it, Mother." Mother hurried out to the tent. She told the children that she had been standing by the window and had seen the first tiny curl of smoke. "If your little fire had spread into the dry glass, we wouldn't have been able to put it out. It would soon have spread to the trees and might even have burned our homes. The woods would all be blackened and maybe some of the wild animals would have been burned to death. Think of all the unhappiness that would have come." When Mother finished talking, the children promised never to light any more fires, and they really meant it. The days went by and soon summer was over and school had begun. Everyone seemed to have forgotten about the fire except Nancy. Every time she thought of it, she felt bad. She had lighted the fire and disobeyed Mother. That was bad enough. Then she had told a lie. She knew that was even worse. What if they hadn't been able to put the fire out? What if it had been burned their home and the woods and Mr. Pringle's chickens next door? It would all have been her fault. The more she thought about it, the more she hurt inside. She wanted to tell Mother, but she kept putting it off from one day to the next. The months slipped by, but Still, Nancy could not forget about the fire. One day she could not stand it any longer. She went to Mother. Mother, do you remember the little fire we had in the tent last summer? Yes, dear, I do, answered Mother. It was I who took the matches from the drawer in the kitchen and lighted that fire. Mother, I'm sorry I disobeyed you and told you that Mary did it. I promise I'll never do anything like that. I'm sure you won't, dear, said Mother. I'm glad you came and told me. It makes me happy to know that my little girl wants to do right. It makes Jesus happy too when we make our wrongs right. Nancy hugged Mother and then they knelt together to ask Jesus to forgive Nancy. After they finished, Nancy felt happy. The hurt feeling inside was all gone. She hummed a little tune and wondered why she had waited so long to tell Mother. Then she remembered something that Daddy had told them in the worship one night. Never let the sun go down before you confess your sins or while you are angry with someone. You will always sleep better if you are right with Jesus and everyone else, he had said. Nancy decided that she would do that in the future.